Coming up, we've done 2 of these, and you loved them, you've asked for more, your wish is granted. The great improv moments of music, and the third time here might be the best. I mean, these are some of the most entertaining stories I've come across. Songs that weren't planned or rehearsed, but became pure gold. We got a producer today who brought a feast of chicken ribs into the studio and got his band so drunk that they blacked out during the session, and they forgot that they wrote a song. When they were got sober, they discovered they created a shocking, unhinged masterpiece that changed rock forever. It's been covered a million times too. There's also the legend who forgot the lyrics to a classic song during a live broadcast in front of thousands and thousands of people. But instead of panicking, she rewrote the song on the spot and walked away with 2 Grammys and a big hit. Plus a UK band that improvised a 2-minute parody track to mock cheesy American rock, fully expecting it to just be a throwaway cut. But their label loved it. They packaged it as a single and it became their biggest hit. And then the broken string that caused a badass guitar sound that the band was never able to repeat again. Let's do it. Hey music junkies, it's time for some improv magic. On this episode, we're counting down 6 more on-the-spot magical moments that turn potential song disasters into unforgettable classics. We're doing less so that we can tell more to flesh out these stories. Starting with our number 6 pick with the Safaris with Wipeout. Formed in 1962, the Safaris were a group of scrappy teen surfers from Glendora, California. In fact, the average age of the band members was like 15. The original lineup consisted of vocalist and drummer Ron Wilson, guitarist Jim Fuller and Bob Berryhill, and bassist Pat Connolly. They were complete no-names, just a bunch of Southern California kids riding the wave of the surf rock craze that was taking over the West Coast at that moment. Now, at the time, instrumental surf music was exploding in pop culture, of course thanks to bands like Dick Dale and the Deltones. The Safaris began playing local parties and school dances, jamming on the sounds that defined their generation. But these garage rockers, they had something special brewing. They just didn't know it. A youthful energy that would soon capture lightning in a bottle with one of the most recognizable drum breaks in rock history. So jump ahead to 1963 in a tiny California studio. The Safaris had just finished recording their song Surfer Joe, and they were feeling really good about it.
Where the surfers all go, there's a big bleached blondie named Surfer Joe.
But then their producer hit them with a bomb, and they weren't expecting it. They needed a B-side. The kids looked at each other in disbelief. They didn't have anything. So they did what any desperate musician would do. They just started playing, coming up with something. Drummer Ron Wilson started pounding out this tribal beat that he'd picked up in high school marching band. The guitarists, they jumped in with a twangy riff, and then out of nowhere, this maniacal voice just cackled, Wipeout, followed by the sound of a surfboard snapping in two. So I guess some of the parents of the kids were there at the practice, and that's where some of this stuff came from. Over the space of 15 frenzied minutes, Wipeout came to life, and it was just a big joke. They were just blowing off steam. Everybody participated. Actually, their manager, Del Smallin, provided that crazy witch doctor laugh. And then one of the guitarist's dads contributed that now iconic cracking sound by literally smashing a piece of plywood near the microphone. He was hearing what this song going on, and he decided to do that. Now, at the heart of it all was Wilson's thunderous drum solo, though. It was pure spontaneity captured on tape. To the Safaris' complete astonishment, this makeshift B-side absolutely destroyed the A-side. Wipeout surfed its way all the way to number 2 in the Hot 100 in 63, riding the charts for 16 weeks, unheard of back then. Meanwhile, their intended single, Surfer Joe, well, that one barely made a dent. It stalled out at number 62. The B-side overcame the A-side once again here. Wipeout became the ultimate surf instrumental from there. Back in the day, those breakneck drum fills were a rite of passage of every aspiring drummer in America, and it came out of nowhere. In the summer of 63, you could not escape this song, that diabolical laugh and the rolling drum intro all over radio. The Safaris went from garage band obscurity to surf rock royalty in the span of just 15 minutes. I gotta say that dad's idea to split the plywood was just genius. It's so cool how it all came together. Of course, Wipeout has gone down in history as a bottle lightning masterpiece. You've heard it in countless films, Dirty Dancing, The Sandlot, to name a few. TV commercials have used it for decades. It's part of our lexicon. The propulsive energy still screams sun, fun, and a touch of danger. Guitar World later recognized Wipeout as one of the top 10 most influential guitar instrumentals of all time. And in 2020, the track was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Not too shabby for a tune that was cooked up in a quarter hour of chaos by a bunch of 14 and 15-year-old kids. Coming in number 5, it's a true classic that will be in your head forever after you hear this, and it's a good thing, don't worry. It's Fontella Bass with Rescue Me.
Can't you see that I'm alone? Rescue me.
This is a song that most mistake for the Supremes, and many still believe it's a Motown song, but it's not. Fontella Bass, she was born into a musical family in St. Louis in 1940, practically destined for a life in music. Her mother was a gospel singer, and Fontella was performing in churches before she could barely walk. By the time she was 5, she was playing piano during the services. Throughout her childhood and her teen years, Fontella honed her skills singing gospel, developing a powerful, soulful voice that came to captivate the world. But the gospel circuit couldn't contain that ambition. In her late teens, she made the leap to secular music, a move that scandalized her church community, but it opened up a new world of possibilities. Imagine that back then. By the early 60s, Fontella landed in Chicago and caught the attention of Chess Records, one of the era's premier blues and R&B labels. She sang backup for blues legends like Etta James and Little Milton. She learned her craft, and she paid her dues for sure. In 1964, she scored a minor hit with a duet alongside Bobby McClure called Don't Mess Up a Good Thing. That cracked the top 40 on the R&B charts. It was a little taste. It was a promising start for sure. But by 1965, Fontella Bass was ready for her solo moment. She was 25 years old, battle-tested from years of gospel training and R&B apprenticeship. And Rescue Me, that was her shot at stardom. Now, the song itself came together by pure accident. It was a Saturday jam session at Chess. Fontella and the crew, they were just messing around. They were fooling around with some ideas. And then suddenly, they struck gold. The track featured an incredible lineup of musicians. Check this out. Maurice White was on drums. Yeah, the same Maurice White who would go on to form Earth, Wind & Fire. Louis Satterfield was on bass, and providing background vocals was the radiant Minnie Riperton. Yeah, loving you, Minnie Riperton.
In springtime, 'cause loving you.
It was pure Chicago soul at its finest. The groove was irresistible. Everything was clicking.
I need you.
Fontella still had to navigate that curveball in the final verse. The moment where her memory just failed her, when she forgot those words during the fade out, and the tape just kept rolling. That was standard practice at Chess in those days. You didn't stop, you kept it going. So Fontella reached back to her church training and did what came naturally. She started humming. Now, years later, she explained it perfectly, and I quote, I forgot some of the words. I remembered from the church what to do if you forget the words. I sang, and it worked out just great. Those impromptu vocals, trading calls and responses with the band's wailing horns, became the song's most unforgettable moment. It was completely unplanned, total improv magic. It wasn't written down anywhere, it's just something she came up with. It was Fontella Bass creating brilliance in real time, turning a flub into pure fire. When Rescue Me hit the airwaves, man, it was like a jolt of electricity. The single surged to #1 on the R&B chart, holding that top spot for 4 straight weeks. On the Hot 100, it climbed all the way to #4. Fontella Bass, at just 25 years of age, became an international star right then and there. And the accolades kept coming. The song earned a Grammy nomination, and eventually, it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Over the decades, everybody from Aretha to Cher has covered it, and the song has appeared in countless movies and commercials.
Can't you see that I'm alone? Rescue me.
Nothing, and I mean nothing, tops the spontaneous, spirited charm of that original recording. Fontella turned a memory lapse into musical immortality. Love it. I love these improv stories.
Rescue me.
All right, coming up next at number 4, I've got the Britpop rockers Blur, and the track that most Americans don't know is a total parody. Talking about song 2. So Blur started out as 4 art school misfits from Colchester and London. Damon Albarn, Graham Coxon, Alex James, and Dave Rowntree. They first gigged under the name Seymour in 1988 before branding to Blur in 1990. They dropped their debut, Leisure, in 1991 and had a number 8 UK hit with There's No Other Way. Great song. Their second album, Modern Life is Rubbish, that followed in 93. And then the band hit the British big time with Park Life in 1994. It was a witty tongue-in-cheek set that turned Blur into the poster boys for a movement the UK press dubbed Britpop, of course. Britpop was a cultural moment. After years of American alt-rock dominating the airwaves, grunge and such, British bands were staging a comeback. We're getting revenge for the movement that honestly was sparking in the early 90s with Jesus Jones and EMF and The Farm and Soup Dragons.
You say you're unbelievable. Right here, right now. Could have sworn that you were an angel.
That is until Smells Like Teen Spirit stole the movement's moment and grunge became the buzz. But it would have its comeuppance just a few years later. Britpop looked to the glory days of British rock, right? The Beatles, the Kinks, the Who, and combined those classic sounds with a contemporary indie vibe. The music was melodic, it was guitar heavy, but what set it apart was the attitude, right? Britpop bands embraced their Britishness for sure, and by the mid-1990s, bands like Blur and Oasis and Pulp and Suede turned into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. With the release of their 4th album, The Great Escape, Blur won the so-called Battle of Britpop in 1995, at least for then.
Are you sure you wanna live like common people?
It's when their single Country House proved more popular than Roll It by Oasis. By this point, Blur had scored 5 straight top 20 singles on the UK charts, but that was just the start. After Country House, they would add 13 more. Here in the US, we missed the bulk of Britpop mania, but some songs did break through. Remember these?
You're my wonderwall. Symphony that's life.
And of course, Song 2, landing on Blur's 1997 self-titled album. Song 2 was written by guitarist Graham Coxon as a parody of the American alternative scene, grunge and such. The track was absurdly simple, just 2 verses, 2 choruses, and the bombastic hook where Albarn yells out as the blistering guitars explode around him. Song 2 was a 2-minute fuzz bomb with a soccer chant, woohoo. It was never meant to be anything serious at all, just an accelerated improv in the studio that they happened to record. The guitars were distorted, the drums were loud and trashy, the lyrics were complete nonsense. Damon Albarn began jumping around the booth screaming with his tongue in cheek. I mean, the whole thing was a goof on grunge, right? A parody, a mocking, a joke. Blur kept the joke going by leaving the title as Song 2. It would then become the second song on the album. It lasted 2 minutes and 2 seconds. It was their second single from the record. I mean, when the record executives heard it, they were like, that's a single, that's a hit. And the members of Blur, their jaws hit the floor. Said Coxon, and I quote, "We just thought it was way too extreme." Even more surprising to the band, their joke song became their biggest US hit. In the States, where Blur's Britpop vibe had fallen flat, Song 2 became an alternative rock radio smash. It hit number 6 on Billboard's Modern Rock Tracks chart and logged 26 weeks total on the chart. American fans who'd never even heard of Britpop had no idea it was a jab at the US rock scene, at grunge and alternative. The track sold over 5 million copies worldwide and became Blur's most recognizable anthem. Over time, Song 2 took on a life of its own, turning into a sports stadium staple. Song's been featured in a number of films, TV shows, video games, everything. The irony, though, is too perfect. Song 2 is meant to poke fun, to mock rock cliches, and it became one itself, as well as Blur's most recognizable track. So here we are at number 3, and we're diving into Metallica's 1986 masterpiece, Master of Puppets. Formed in Los Angeles in 1981 by drummer Lars Ulrich and guitarist James Hetfield, Metallica had quickly become leaders of the thrash metal movement. Now, their 1983 debut, Kill 'Em All, established them as underground heroes with blazing speed and raw aggression. Then 1984's Ride the Lightning, one of my favorites, showed the world that they could write complex, ambitious material without losing any of that intensity. By 1986, Metallica were young thrash titans on the rise. Fresh off the success of Ride the Lightning, they were in Copenhagen recording their third album, Master of Puppets, pushing themselves to new heights of songwriting and technique. The title track, that was an 8.5-minute roller coaster through addiction and control. Machine gun riffs, a melodic interlude, and a face-melting dual guitar solo. Now, Kirk Hammett, he'd composed an elaborate solo for this song, and when the tape rolled, he went all out, leaving nothing on that recording room floor. But midway through, right after the powered down middle section, he tore into a furious lead. And then it happened. Kirk accidentally yanked a guitar string off the fretboard. But instead of ruining the take, it produced this weirdly exalted squealing high note. Like Kirk hit a note beyond human hearing. One slip of the hand that would become the solo's most memorable moment and one of the most memorable moments in thrash metal history. Hammett thought that he completely botched it. He was convinced he'd ruined an otherwise perfect take. He later explained, and I quote, "I'd accidentally pulled the string off the fretboard. Of course, I've never been able to reproduce that since. It was like a magic moment that was captured on tape," end of quote. But when Metallica listened back, they absolutely lost their minds. That unexpected squeal, it was brilliant. It added that extra jolt of insanity to an already electrifying solo. Producer Fleming Rasmussen, he agreed it should stay, and so the ghost note remained, becoming a piece of Metallica lore. A broken string classic moment that the band tried for years to repeat, to replicate, to duplicate. They never could. I mean, fans came to anticipate that moment. They'd air guitar along, mimicking that high squeak during live shows. Kirk himself has said that he has to play the solo exactly as recorded every single night because diehards expect to hear it note for note. But try as he might, like I said, Kirk has never perfectly duplicated that freaky sound in concert. He's tried. It only makes the original studio moment even more legendary, though. Master of Puppets, that's since sold 7 million copies in the US alone. And of course, decades later, when Stranger Things featured the track in 2022, this 36-year-old song entered the Billboard Hot 100 for the very first time, peaked at number 40. But more importantly, Master of Puppets is widely recognized as one of the greatest metal songs ever created. An explosive mix of precision and spontaneity, where even an accident became total art. Coming in at the bridesmaid position, I got a great one. Screamin Jay Hawkins with I Put a Spell on You.
I put a spell on you.
Now, the famed Screamin Jay Hawkins didn't start out as a shock rock ghoul at all. The man started out life as Jealousy Hawkins, a Cleveland kid who dreamed of seeing opera. Yeah. Along the way, he boxed for a spell, and he learned enough piano and theory to front jump blues bands. In the early 50s, he sharpened his act with guitarist Tiny Grimes cutting ruckus sides like I Need Someone and Baptize Me in Wine.
Well, alive, he's dead.
But soon, Hawkins discovered that the more he howled, the louder the room got. It was exceptional. By the mid-50s, Hawkins had written a song called I Put a Spell on You. It started his life as a slow lovesick ballad. Jay envisioned something tender, in the style of Ray Charles, a genuine lament about lost love, written to win back an ex-girlfriend, actually.
Because of mine.
Anyway, that's what he planned to record when he walked into a New York City studio in 1956. But when producer Arnold Maxon got involved, things took a new direction entirely. Maxon had very different ideas about what the song should be. He'd heard Jay's straight ballad take, and he thought it was a little stiff. So Maxon asked how the band sounded on stage when they were really cutting loose. Jay Hawkins joked that in the clubs they were usually too drunk to remember. So Arnold Maxon decided to recreate those conditions exactly. He brought in a feast of ribs and chicken into the studio, cracked open some booze for the whole band, and told them, dig in and let's go for it. Screamin Jay's band, they got absolutely hammered. And that's when things took a completely unexpected turn there. Jay howled, he grunted, he hollered like a man possessed by some primal force. What came out was completely unhinged. Groans and grunts and that volcanic baritone tearing through the song. Hawkins completely blacked out during that recording. And when he regained his senses the next day, he didn't know he'd written the song. He heard the playback. He didn't even recognize himself. He didn't realize he created an all-time masterpiece. Years later, Jay said that Maxon got everybody drunk and we came out with this weird version. He said, I don't even remember making the record. Before I was just a normal blues singer. I found out I could do more, destroying a song and screaming it to death. His words. What they'd captured was pure unfiltered chaos set to a rhythm and blues beat. Hawkins' once mellow love song had been transformed into a voodoo rock nightmare of obsession. It was spine-tingling. It was arguably the first shock rock recording ever made. Years before Alice Cooper.
I love you anyhow!
It was part music, part performance art, part exorcism, let's be honest. Radio stations, they were horrified. One critic said the screeching wild original sounded cannibalistic, like a man eating someone. Stations started banning it just left and right. Producer Maxon actually had to edit the track to tone it down just a notch, and that slightly milder version is what eventually caught on with listeners. I Put a Spell on You initially failed to chart for Hawkins. Remember, this was the 50s. But his influence spread like wildfire. Seizing the moment, Jay went all in on the macabre persona. He started emerging from a coffin on stage. He wore capes and put a bone through his nose. He carried around a smoking skull on a stick that he named Henry. He basically invented the theatrical horror aesthetic in rock and roll, and it's decades ahead of his time. By the 1960s, cover versions were rolling in from all directions. Nina Simone recorded a smoldering version in 1965, and that one hit number 23 in the R&B chart. Of course, Creedence Clearwater Revival put out a psychedelic blues version in '68 that became a catalog staple. Today, it's a Halloween anthem, and Screamin Jay Hawkins is revered as an eccentric pioneer who changed the game completely. Not every day does a blackout in the studio conjure up a classic, but this one sure did. Awesome. Now, before we get to the number one spot, I gotta throw in one honorable mention, one that I think's pretty cool. Otis Redding sitting on the dock of the bay.
Yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay.
Recorded just days before his tragic death in a plane crash. Oh, what a loss. Sitting on the dock of the bay, that became Otis Redding's most beloved track, right? Honestly, it's easy to hear why. The song is a laid-back masterpiece, instantly singable with a groove that just washes over you. But that whistling melody, as the song fades out, that wasn't part of the plan at all. Otis had actually intended to add another verse at the end. When it came time to record it, though, he blanked. He couldn't remember what he wanted to say there, couldn't remember the lyrics. So right there in the moment, he just started whistling. That spontaneous moment from Otis, forgetting the lyrics, it's one of soul's most memorable outros of all time. So cool. All right, coming in at number one, and this one's a cool one. It's the incomparable Ella Fitzgerald singing Mack the Knife. You gotta hear the story.
Could it be Mack the Knife?
Ella Fitzgerald was born in 1917 in Newport News, Virginia, and grew up in Yonkers, New York, where money was tight. Music was a lifeline for her. After her mother died in 1932, Ella drifted, skipping class and briefly landed in a reform school. Everything changed though in November of 1934 at the Apollo Theater's amateur night in Harlem. Ella's plan was to dance, but she froze and then chose to sing instead. Her clear time, her perfect pitch, and her stage presence won the contest and caught the ear of a band leader named Chick Webb. He hired her for the Savoy Ballroom Orchestra from there. With Webb, though, Ella became a sensation. And when Webb died in 1939, she fronted the band for a time as Ella Fitzgerald and her famous orchestra. But then she stepped out on her very own.
What else can I do?
In the Verve years, she defined the American songbook on her record, let's be clear. By the time she was crowned the First Lady of Song, Ella had stacked up landmark collaborations, a shelf of Grammys, and a touring career that set the template for modern jazz vocalists. But let's jump to 1960, Berlin, Germany. Ella Fitzgerald was in the middle of what would become one of her greatest performances, one of the greatest of her legendary career. Now the crowd was hanging on every note. The band was swinging. Everything was clicking. Then she started into Mack the Knife, one of the most popular standards of the era.
Down by the river, don't you know?
Bobby Darin had already taken it to #1 for 8 weeks. It was a huge song.
Could that someone be Mack the Knife?
Then right in the middle of this classic, she totally forgot the words. Now for most singers, this would have been a total disaster. This was Ella Fitzgerald we're talking about though. The woman who could do anything with her voice. So she kept going. She improvised. She wrote new lyrics in real time on the spot. She made it all up. And it was so great, everybody thought it was part of the show.
Look out there, Bobby Darin, me and you both singing the same song this year.
You can hear her confess and pivot. Lines like, oh, what's the next chorus of this song now? And we're making a wreck. What a wreck of Mack the Knife.
What a wreck, such a wreck of this same old song.
She name-checked earlier hit versions, Bobby Darin and Louis Armstrong. In the place of the original text, she also threaded in scat breaks and a rhythmic call and response with the band. The whole thing was playful, it was joyous, it was just an incredible moment where she was having so much fun with the situation, it became absolutely brilliant. The improvisation, the humor, her musical mastery on full display. What could have been an embarrassing train wreck instead became one of the most celebrated live recordings in jazz history.
Bobby Darin and Louis Armstrong.
The performance was captured on the album Ella in Berlin. It was released in 1960. But here's where the story gets even better. Despite forgetting the lyrics to one of the album's standout tracks, Ella walked away with 2 Grammys. The Recording Academy basically said, yeah, you know what, she forgot the words, but it was so great, we're giving her 2 Grammys anyway.
Oh, Mack, we swallow Mack down.
That Berlin show, it's become the stuff of a legend. You gotta go back and listen to it. Music historians and jazz fans point to it as a perfect example of what made Ella Fitzgerald so very special. It wasn't just her technical skill or her perfect pitch, though. It was her ability to think on her feet, to connect with an audience in real time and make them part of the moment. There's so much to it, but really that's the genius of Ella. She can forget every word and still walk away a winner. Because man, when you're that talented, when you're that zoned in, when you have the audience in the palm of your hand, even mistakes can become masterpieces. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about the latest edition of Improv Magic. What do you remember about these songs? You have memories about them? Man, what great artists, what great legends. I love how it just comes out of nowhere. Would you like to see another volume? Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe. Love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, records and the truth, my friends.